Assalamu alaikum. In our last lecture, we have studied TypeScript. In this lecture, we will start Angular by developing a sample app. Instead of directly going towards the concepts of Angular, we will start it using a sample app. Then we will study those concepts one by one, and we will implement those concepts with the passage. So we today we will start Angular. We will install it. We will see the structure, how Angular works, how the components and modules and other concepts of Angular work together. Then we will see components in the next lecture, components and how the data binding is done in these components. And then we will study the directives, decorators, and Angular routing, forms, services, and there are so many other concepts just like dependency injections, reactive programming, and observable, which you have may have heard before. So these are all the concepts which we will study, and then we will see that how we can connect these services with our REST API which we have developed in our server part. So this will be our whole roadmap which we will follow. First of all, let's see how we can install Angular on our system and how this Angular works overall. For this, we use Angular CLI. Angular CLI is actually a command line interface which automates your workflow and create a sample application for you. It will add a sample light server in your application for running your application. It will add a sample component into your application. It will add a parent module into your application. It will add a routing module into your application, and many other things that it will include. It includes the unit testing architecture into your system. It also includes end-to-end testing mechanism into your application. So while we are using Angular CLI, it creates a complete flow of your application where you can write your test cases, where you can test your application end-to-end testing, and you can create your components, you can generate your services, and other many concepts which can be done using this Angular CLI. So let's see. To install this Angular CLI on your system, you need to install it globally on your system. For that, you have to run the command npm install -g@angular/CLI. This will install Angular CLI on your system. It is better if you if you update your npm before installing the Angular CLI. Currently Angular 9 is going on. 9.1 is actually the CLI version which is being used. So you will use Angular 9 for development of your application. You can check either the application your ng is working or not. You can just write ng space -v. It will give you the current version of your Angular application. Now, after installing the Angular CLI on your system, now our first step is to create a sample application. For example, for that we have a command ng space new or init. We have two commands. We will see what is the difference. Ng new and the name of the project. For example, in our case, LMS was the name of our server. So we are creating with the same name, for example, LMS for the front end. So what we will run the command ng space new space LMS. So it will create a new folder LMS and create all the architecture in that folder, and install all the dependencies that needs to be run for your Angular project. So it will take some time, and will install it. After that, you will move to that folder and you will run a command ngserve. Ngserve, it will execute your project and display an output on your browser at localhost colon 4200. This is the default port of your Angular application, you can use Angular ng. We will see it. I have installed the application. I will show you because it takes time. It downloads modules from the internet, so that's why I have installed it beforehand to show you. Then we have ng init and ng new. If you use ng init, it will create the application in the current directory. If you use ng new, it will create a new directory in current directory and will install all the applications there. So it's up to you. You can use ng new, you can use ng init. There is no other difference. So it's up. We will use ng new, or if we have already created the directory, we can use ng init. Behind the scene, what it does, behind the scene, the following happens: a new directory, my app, is created. All source files and directories for your new Angular application are created based on the new name you specified, and best practices from the official Angular style guide. NPM dependencies are installed. TypeScript is configured for you. The Karma runner, test runner, it is a test runner which runs the unit testing for you, is configured for you. Then the protractor, which is basically E2E testing tool, will be installed. It is a complete framework that will be installed for you. And environment variables, environment files has been settled for you. So all these steps it takes just with one command. When you run ng new, the project name, behind the scene there are a lot of stuff which Angular do for you. So this is all we have seen: ng new, ng init. We can use any of these alternatively. What is new in Angular 9? Actually, there are some advanced concepts, and I will let you know when we will covering those concepts. But at the start, what it differs. Uh, Before that, we just run ng new project name, and it installs all the things. But now it will ask you whether you want to install the routing module or not, whether you want to CSS install CSS, SCSS, SAS, and less any of these styling languages. Basically these are pre-compiled languages, and you have to compile it to get CSS. Compiler alternatively run the CSS. So it's up to you. If you are you feel easy with the CSS, you can use CSS. If you have other options with you, you can install you can use SCSS or SASS or LESS. It's up to you, whatever the styling language you want to configure with your system. So Angular 9 is basically an interactive CLI, so you can use this. If you don't specify one of the option, a prompt will appear. You can of course deactivate this prompt. If you want to deactivate this prompt, what you need to do: ng space new, when name of the project, minus minus no minus interactive. No interactive will stop the prompt to ask from you, and it will go with the default. It's up to you. If you want to go with the default, you can use the word default. Same, you can create an application. With no create application, it will not create any application for you, but it will create the architecture which includes workspace with the npm, TypeScript, and TSLint, and Angular CLI configuration. But there will be no application for you. And same, you can use dash dash minimal. It will create a very minimal there will be no unit testing, no end-to-end testing, and no TNS listener. So it's up to you. You can create a full-fledged application, sample application. You can modify it according to your need. You can create a minimal application. You can create a structure without any application. So it's up to you. You can use any parameter. So before going to the structure, let's see what is the way out to create application. After installing globally Angular CLI, what you need to do, just like this, I did ng new LMS, and it asked me, would you like to add Angular routing? I said yes. And then it asked you which style sheets format would you like to use. I said CSS. After that, it installed number of things on my system, and after creating the complete application, it installed all the packages from the internet, and it downloads all the packages and installed it, and it sets the git for me. And at the end, after setting the git, what I did, I go to the lms folder, and then I use the command ngserve. What it did, it compile all the code, and it asked me either you want to send the analytics to the server. I said no, and includes it it compiled all of its directory and started the application. Now after starting the application, I can go to localhost 42,000, and on this it has configured lms for me. It is showing me lms app is running. It is showing me the learning resources. It is showing me the next step what we need to do. Either we need angular material to install into our application, or we want to create new application, a new component into it. We will see how new components will be added, and etc. So a complete guide has been provided to you on its front object. Let's see its structure. By default, when it install on your system, what it has a number of files. If we go through some of the files, uh, you will be aware of tsconfig.json. In last lecture we have seen it. Target converting ts file into our js files. Same specs is always for a test case. All the specs files, all either it is related to your component or services or any other. If the name has the dot spec, it means it is used for the unit testing. So same package.json, it shows the number of packages which it has installed. If you see, there is number of modules that has been already installed by this, including animations, common compiler, code, forms, platform browser dynamics, router, rxjs library, tslib, zones.js, and number of further libraries. Those are required to run our system. Same, it has installed the node. It has Jasmine, Karma. These are the test runners. Protector, our test runner. TS node. It is just convert TS node. In our last lecture, I told you it is basically converts our TS files directly into JS and run it. So all the packages has been installed by this package.json file. And if we go to the script file, ng start is basically ng serve, ng build, ng test, ng lint, e2e. So these are all different functionalities which is it is going to be performed. Alongside this, what we have a major folder. One is E2E. Basically, it is typically for end-to-end testing. But what we need to learn is actually this source folder. Source folder is the main folder which is related to our working. In it, what we have, there is a app folder, there is a assets folder, environment folder, favicon.icon, index.html, main.ts, polyfills, styles, test.ts. So let's start. The important thing, the first, as you know, Angular is our SPS, single page application. So the page which is going to be loaded in your browser is index.html. This is the only page which will be loaded into your system, and that page will remain there. It will not load any other page. Every component, every element, every view, whichever you will create, will be loaded into this thing. Now see what it is. It has by default it has installed our viewport. That means it is already have bootstrap into it. You can mobile first development. So it has already there. And in the body part there is only one thing. This is app root. Actually it is mounting of a component, our parent component. We are mounting our parent component here. This I will explain what root is. So this is the main file which will be loaded into your browser, and it shows app root component into your browser. This is what it is. This is basically index.html, and all the content written into it is the part of app component dot app component, our app component. So other than that, if we see, polyfills are some of the libraries. If you don't find anything in specific browser that doesn't support any specific library, it will change that library into some other way out. So it contains all the polyfills. Then the styles.css, it is the main file which globally applies on the styles or your css. Every component has its own css, but overall the least priority is this style.css. This component css has the upper priority than this style.css. Now we will go this app folder. This is our main folder after source folder. Source and app is our parent component and parent module folder. In it we have multiple files. We will see every component we will create. By default there is one component with the name app component, has four files: app component.cs file, app component app.component.html file, app component.specs.ts file, and app component.ts file. These are the four files which will be created with every new component we will create. App component.css file will contain the css related to that component. App component.html will contain the view. This is what you are looking at your main screen. This is main html which has been created, and you have seen that in this is the code for this all screen. So this is the main code, and this is the main component which display everything. Specs is related to your test cases, so we will not touch it at the moment. And component.ts, it is actually a class which handles the JavaScript concepts. All the JavaScript and its functionalities will be handled in this ts file. We will write our class just like this. We have created a class app component, and with the title we have declared a variable title lms, and we will use these variables or functions into our html file. It has a decorator function that has been explained in last lecture. Decorator function is telling us three things. The selector to this component is app root. This is, no, just remember, you have seen this app root in this index.html file. This app root is a selector. It shows that we are calling this selector. So selector is used to call any specific component. So we have loaded this component into our index.html, and in this app route we also defined that it has a template url with the name app component.html. It also tells us style url is app.component.css. so it is including these two files along with this actual class file has only lms written into it. This is the title which is shown on this top bar, you can see. So in this way index.html is calling this component, and the component will display the information whatever required, and this component will have child components, multiple child components, and so on. So these components will be hierarchy which display the concepts, all the concepts. And our navigation will be done using this app routing module. We will do it using this routes array. We will define the routes for which we will create our all the navigation in our application. there is another file that is basically app.module.ts. App.module.ts is actually a module, a container which contains the information like what are the components that are the part of this module. Like in this case we have only one component, app component. This is the part of this module. We are also telling our compiler that this module needs app routing module and browser module to run its application. It also tells the browser that app component needs bootstrap, and that's why bootstrap is available in this application. And this class is absolutely empty. All this information is actually a decorator. We are passing all this information as a decorator, and class has nothing in it. So this is the way out with which we will work. This is a basic introduction. Whenever we will create a new component, it will be created in this source folder. We will see today how when we can create these components also. So this is the structure. The first file that will be called is your index.html. Don't try to change its content. Then we will in this app root is called, and whatever we will do in app root component. So we will start from here. Whenever we will delete these concepts, and we will create our own navigation bar, and we will do whatever we want to implement. So this is the structure of our application. Now going back to the slides, this is the same structure which is going to be explained. Angular CLI, E2E end-to-end testing, Karma test runners, source folder which has an app component. App component has 4 files. We have app module.ts, which is the module file. We have the index.html, which is our main file. App bootstrap main.ts is basically app bootstrap. This is the all structure which I have explained to you. So same root folder, root component. This component will serve always as a root component, and this module will work as a root component, and any other component will be a child component of app component. You have gitignore, you have edit config, you have angular.json, you have node modules, you have package.json, package.log.json, ts config.json, ts lint.json, and so many other files. Everyone has a specific purpose. We know package.json is containing the module dependencies, tsconfig containing the TypeScript configuration files for our system, angular.json contains the CLI configuration for our system, and gitignore is for the git, and same edit config is for the editors. So these are all the configuration files that are in our project, that are in our project. Other than this, we have app which contains our parent app. We contain the assets. If we want to put some images, we can copy those images into our asset folder. Environments, these contains the production environment variables. We will see it when we will deploy this application. Then we is same, we have a browserlet which has the configuration for the browser, favicon icon, index.html, we have seen it, main.ts, I have told you it is basically also for the development environment, ahead of time compilation, etc. Polyfill is provide the polyfill for the browser support. If some browser doesn't support for example ES7 syntax, so these polyfills will define some other way or some API based calling and performing those performing those tasks. Same stall.css is contain the major CSS file, test.ts main entry point of your unit testing, and ts config, etc. I have also explained these files in detail. Now if we want, our application by default will run on localhost colon 4200, and it is hot reload. Whenever you will change the code, it will automatically impact and will show you the updated information in your code. We will see we can create any new component, directives, pipes, services by using a g command, ng component and component name. we will see, like this is our component. What if we change the name a variable, like in this case it is lms bcs7. So if we save, let's display this bcs7 app is running. You can see it has updated the information automatically and reloaded my code. So variable is used in our html file, just like I will show. There will be interpolation. There are so many code. We don't need these codes, we will delete it, don't worry. Welcome, and here somewhere the this is the title, span title. So this is the way out. The variable that declared into our ts file will be used into our html file. Html file will use these variables. html file will contain loops that it can contain if else statements, and anything that can be can you do in programming will be available in your html code also. This is the power of this angular application. And now next what we want to do, like lms we want to create a component. What we will do, ng g is for generator. You can write the short course. C is for the component, and I want to create a component with the name home. So I wrote nggc home. So what it will do, it will take time, a few seconds, and it will create a new component. Now we will go into our now you can see what it did. It has created a new component home with the four files: home component.cs khali, home component.html. This contains just one paragraph, and then typescript. Sorry, typescript. It is basically ts file for testing, and then you have a typescript file that contains the main logic. It created a main component for you, class based component for you. We will study these component in our next lecture, but this is the way we can create a new component. So when we created a new component, if we go back to app.module.ts, you can see app component, home component, which we have recently created, has been added into app module.ts, and also it has been declared that it is the part of your this module. So this module will contain any component we will create. We can create different modules also, but the parent component, but this component is by default the part of this app module component. So this is the way out. Going back to the lecture, we have seen nggc and the name of the component. We can create the component. This is so simple for us. Same, we can create the directive, pipes and services. We will study these concepts. Same, we can create new modules. We can assign components to the module, etc. If we could not install routing at the start, we can add this routing file afterward. For that we have to write ng generate module app routing minus minus flat minus minus module equal to app. App is the name of our module, app.module.ts. So it will create a new routing file if you couldn't create at your start of the application, when it was asking you to create a routing file. So we have created a new component, and we have seen it has created the four files: html template file, ts file, css file, specs.ts file. These are all files. These four files, every component will contain these four files. Oh, and before going on, what is a component? Component is actually a building block, is the basic building block of your complete angular application. Any view, for example a form, can be a component. A part of a form can be a component. A page header, it can be a component. A page footer can be a component. Any view can be a combination of multiple components or a single component. it can be possible that your about us page is combination of three components. For example, the header component, the middle component, and your footer component. So every view can have multiple components in it, and it can also be possible that a view carrying only one component in it. So we define the views based on the components. So this is the basic concept of component. For the most part, when you are developing, you are only going to be working within the source folder. Angular components are the basic building block of your application. Each component defines any necessary imports, any decorator, and any other information that is needed to be completed. So actually our main work is in our components. We will define the components, we will make reusable components, like just like header, footer, or something like this. Like a form, we can create a form component, and that can be called on many places. So this is the way out with which we will create an Angular application. If we want to change, we can change Angular applications title as a first step. Just install it and change it. You can add some CSS to see how it differentiate, etc. So these are the all basic steps that can be performed at your home today. So better to install it, and first install the Angular CLI globally, then create a project into your folder, and then ch- change few things into it. You will see what will happen. That changes will be reflected into your view uh, immediately. For the production, we can deploy our application into a production environment. For that, we just only need to use the command ngbuild. Ngbuild will convert our application into a disk folder, and it will contains only a three-fold very lightweight files. One is for CSS file, and others are the JavaScript files. And those three four lightweight files will contain all the code you have done. So this is the way out with which you can deploy. We will do it after creating your application. You will deploy this by using ngbuild. We have different options for this. We will use these options at the time. We can use watch, we can use target, we can use output path, environment, base, ahead of time compilation, etc. So these are all the options with ngbuild. So in the production mode, you don't need so much heavy files. Like at the moment, if you create the application, it will be something like 200 300 MB folder. But when you deploy this folder, when you use to deploy, then this folder will be 130K or something like this. It will be such a lightweight files as an output directory. So these are the odd features. We will study it again. I'm leaving it for the future purpose, that ngbuild minus production minus ahead of time, how we will use this, and what will be the advantage of using this, etc. So these are our concepts. When we will deploy our application, we will use it. Unit testing, I have told you a basics, that it has built in a unit testing. For the unit testing, it has .specs.ts. Specs means it is for the unit testing. For built-in, it has three concepts. One is the Jasmine. Jasmine is actually a language to write the test case. Then you have a Karma, that is a test runner. This tool is used to run this Jasmine testing. And the Protector is also a framework which run end-to-end testing, a complete application integration testing. So the testing required for your application will can be done within this framework also. For this, you just need to learn Jasmine, just like this. If you see, describe is the our input and what it expects the output. So this is the way we can write different test cases, and we can apply those test cases. We will see it also with the testing lectures, when we will deploy when we will deploy, and before the deployment we will do the testing of server side and of the client side. So in that we will use some basic Jasmine language to write the test cases. These are the sample test cases, and these are the different assertions that can be applied and that can be checked on any input values. So we will use it. These are all the option expect dot to equal dot to be to match. These are the different operations that can be performed. These are called assertions. Assertions are basically different possibilities of implementing or getting the input from the user. So in front end testing, what we do, we provide different type of inputs, and we will see that what and we will expect that this will be our output. This is the way with it, with Jasmine also. It expects that it should be defined, and it should be undefined, or it should be null, it should be true, it should be false, it should be match, or etc. So these are all the assertions that can be applied to any field into our form or any input value. Karma is actually a test runner which which runs the Jasmine testing code. For Angular, if you want to run the test, it is a simple command ng-test. Ng-test will run your Karma, and it will run all the tests which has been defined, and it will provide you a complete output in a log file. So I'm leaving it for the future purpose. End-to-end testing, this you will just write ng E2E, and it will run complete your end-to-end testing, and it will tell you the output, where it lacks, where about the test, which how many it passed, how many failed. So end-to-end testing can be performed also. That's all from the today's lecture. We have seen how a basic application can be created, and what is the structure of this basic application in our Angular application. What are the basic concepts of this application, like component, your module, your decorator. In our next lecture, we will study these concepts in detail, and we will implement these concepts. We will use the code to change, like just like data binding, we will do the data binding live in our lectures also. So this is the way we will study a concept, we will implement it. We will study a concept, we will implement it. That's all. Inshallah, meet you in next lecture. Thank you very much.